Welcome to Cochranton, Pennsylvania. Situated along the shores of French Creek, this beautiful township is filled with rich history and local pride. Join us as residents show and tell everything that makes their community a great hometown.
Hello, my name is Mark Roach, and today I'd like to talk about the railroad station here in Cochranton, which is the Atlantic and Great Western. Beginning in 1980, the community of Cochranton had 125th anniversary. This was celebrating the 125 years since the incorporation of the borough on April the 5th, 1855. During that time, we kind of rolled it back like a centennial, and we started to uncover all the old pictures and photographs, and we're pretty much excited about our history. And we had a ceremony and several weeks of entertainment in the community. From that, everyone decided, gee, we should maybe have a historical society. So the Cochranton Heritage Society was founded. At that time, we decided, we were just getting started, young group that only had a handful of members, that we needed to get some kind of an idea what direction we would go. In 1976, the old depot, which was still down by the tracks, the Cochranton Library was looking at expanding and making their facility a little bigger, and thinking maybe they would move down there and change it into a library. They contacted Conrail, who at the time was the owner of the property, and the price just wasn't right. They didn't have the money to do it, and so it was kind of forgotten. So somebody at one of our meetings mentioned, gee, maybe that railroad station would be a nice place for us to display a lot of the history that we have. And we approached them also, and being, again, another young group, we didn't have the money to do it either. So it was kind of put on the back burner. That's something we'll do once we raise some funds. 1982, I get a phone call one early morning at my shop, and the lady who lives in the neighborhood says, I thought you folks were going to do something with that old railroad depot. And I started my spiel of, well, we're going to, and she said, well, they're tearing it down. So I was quick to find out what she was talking about, and there was a backhoe down there, and they were starting to peel the slate off of the roof. So I called the police department, and with the police chief and I, we got in the car and drove down there, and it was kind of a rainy, nasty day, and the gentleman was kind enough to stop his demolition and get off and said, what can I help you folks with? And he said, well, don't you know this is on the National Register of Historic Buildings? And he said, well, it might be, but I was paid, and I'm going to be paid to tear this thing down. And so we said, well, I think that should save it. So being a nasty day, he said, well, you've got the rest of the day to figure out what you want to do. So we were able to put together a restraining order, which stopped the demolition and put us in contact with Conrail. So to kind of make a long story a little shorter, we were finally able to reach an agreement with them that we would be able to purchase the building for the filing costs, which was around $50-some. The $15,000 that they wanted initially kind of went away because we had made enough of an effort in the local papers, et cetera, to make them look a little bit on the bad side. So the idea was we still had to move it, because the reason the building was being destroyed, it was 30 feet too near the track because of the style of track and the whatever. So the building would have to be moved. We were to do that within a timely manner, which ended up being almost 2 years, because it was over $12,000 to have it moved. So the place that was chosen was the Cochranton Fairgrounds, which is about a block and a half from where the station was originally. And the reason being was, being a young heritage society of now only about 3 or 4 years, we weren't too sure if we would survive either. But we wanted to make sure that the building got put onto borough property, and the fairgrounds is actually owned by the borough. And so arrangements were made with the borough council, and fundraising was started, and the building is 109 feet long, so you can't move that all in one piece. So the first thing was to find a moving company, which we did, and then to cut the building in half. So that each section could be moved separately. And within The depot then was moved to the Cochranton Fairgrounds, which was borough property. That way it would make sure if the Heritage Society would fail to continue, we would be on borough property, and now the building actually would be belonged to the borough of Cochranton, which is what the intention was initially. So at this point now we're starting to do our restoration. We've moved it over in 2 pieces, and it's set for a number of years and looked about as bad and dilapidated as it is at the original because we lacked the funds. We didn't lack the intent, but we lacked the funds. So money would continue to be, through different fundraisers, we would continue to get enough money to be able to actually put the building back together again. This was about a 10-year period by the time we did that. We do a little bit at a time as money would come in, securing the roof and securing the building so that it would be secure, and then going ahead to do interior and exterior paintings, etc. The first time that the building was actually open was during the Cochranton Fair. We opened it in stages, several rooms at a time, until the building was completely open and then filled with artifacts from the community. The museum is kind of like a time machine. When we tell people to come, it's like walking back in town. You go back into the community that was somebody else's community 50, 100 to 200 years ago. In there you will find artifacts dealing with the community's founding, the businesses, military. We have a fine display of military uniforms. The school, we're very proud of our schools in the Cardinal, so we'll find the athletic teams and the uniforms from those periods of time. Businesses are well representative that have shaped our community. One of our main displays is the Wally Kramer Main Street display, which is a model of the Main Street as it would appear around the turn of the century. Mr. Kramer took over 6 years to develop all the buildings and build them, working from photographs and from memories. Upon his passing, then their family donated all the buildings to us, and now they are there. So when you walk down through the display on either side, it's like walking down Adams Street at the turn of the century. Communities need to have a place where they can brag a little bit. So you need to walk back and remember the people that were here before that helped and shaped us. So by saving the artifacts and by saving the photographs and the pictures and whatever, gives you a sense of the legacy, which is what this community is all about. We can reach back by generations, by fathers to grandfathers to great-grandfathers, and see them participating in our community, not only in athletics, in the school, and in business.
Hi, I'm Sharon Bufner, and I'm going to tell you all about the Cochran House in Cochranton. In 1970, we moved into Cochranton as a newly married couple, and we didn't really know anybody there, but it was all about location. So anyways, we got very comfortable with Cochranton. It's a nice little town, friendly people, but the location was why we initially moved here. And we both had jobs in Meadville and had saved some money, and by 1977, we thought, gee, this would be a good time to buy a house. We want to stay in Cochranton, let's buy a home. So Bob Shaw, who at that time worked for McConnell Real Estate, said, I have just a house for you kids, pack your suitcases, you can move right in, you don't need to do anything to the house at all. So we looked at the house, and the first thing I noticed was open front porch, just the perfect place for a swing. And 2-car garage, which of course my husband liked to tinker with cars and that, so that was his good too. So Bob Shaw took us to look at the house, and the first thing I noticed was that he had used a skeleton key to open the door. And even in 1977, that was kind of strange, but I like old things and old houses, so that was okay. So we went into the house, and I saw the nice honey-colored hardwood floors, open stairway. I looked up, and there was this really antique-looking stained glass light hung from the ceiling, and also was a transom window over the door. And you just don't see those anymore, even back then. And I thought, wow, this house is really interesting. So we walked on through the house in a little kitchen, formal dining room, which is my kind of thing, and looked down the basement stairs. And I saw that the basement stairs were rather unusual. They had steps going down the center, but there was like a runner on either side. And I naively thought, you could take your lawnmower down the basement and work on it. Only that wasn't what it was for, but I didn't realize it at the time. Now, we did realize that it was a funeral home. Someone had told us that, but that didn't bother me because I grew up with the kids like 2 doors down when I was a kid in Sandy Lake at the funeral home, and it never really bothered me. So the only thing we needed to do, we went ahead, bought the house, we had saved some money, and the one thing I wanted to change before we moved in was the kitchen floor, because I like to bake and cook and can, and I'm pretty messy with making pies. The flour flies everywhere. And so we put down some linoleum. So the house was totally empty, and we're working away, measuring and cutting and all that, and there was nothing, no music on at all, and all of a sudden we heard this creak, and oh my gosh, his eyes got big, my eyes got big, and the hair stood up on the back of my neck, and I'm thinking, oh my God, we bought a haunted house. That only lasted for a moment because I thought, that's ridiculous. So he and I got up, went to the front door, and here's a big, heavy door, and it had drifted forward, and that's why it made that squeaking noise, you know. But anyways, I was sitting on the stairs, and he was sitting facing me, leaning against the door, and he looked down, and he says, there's hinges on that bottom step. And I got up, and sure enough, the bottom step in the middle lifts up. And the only thing I can figure is probably when Mr. McCabe had the funeral home, and somebody paid him maybe late when the bank was closed, that maybe he put his money there. I don't know. But of course, we stuck our hand in there and reached all around, hoping it'd pay for the house. There was nothing there but dust, so that didn't work. But anyway, we moved into the house, and it's been a wonderful treasure. It really has. And we were there probably a couple months, and someone came to the door, and she had that picture of the house originally. And I looked at that thing and I thought, oh my God, this house is really, really old. You could see the couple sitting on the porch had long black outfits on, and the man had a big long white beard. And I'm thinking, who are these people? So that made me excited. I went to the courthouse, started tracing back the deeds, and I found out that actually before the McCabes had the house, a Cochran had the house, a John J. Cochran. And I thought that was really, really interesting, but I thought, oh, he's probably just a cousin or a nephew or something of the original settlers. So it wasn't until I really started doing this story that I realized how historic that house really is. So I started doing the cemeteries, and I took a lot of pictures, and discovered a new cemetery that I didn't know. Conneaut Cemetery is between here and Meadville. And it's a really old cemetery, and I found the original person who owned the land. The biggest part of Cochran sits on is Thomas Cochran. He and John Adams both bought land here, but the Cochran territory was probably the most part of the town on which my house sits on. And how this comes down to the house is that Thomas had a son, Joseph. Joseph had a son, John J., and John J. had a daughter that married John McCabe. And John McCabe had a son who also carried on the McCabe name, and I thought for sure that it was McCabe's wife that was the Cochran, but it isn't. It was the Margaret Cochran, who was Lawrence McCabe, who I bought the house from, with a direct line to the Cochran family.
Hi, I'm John Morrison, and I'm here to tell you about my life and a little about the town that I live in, which is Cochranton, Pennsylvania. In 1900, my great-grandparents, which was Samuel Myers, he owned Myers' Bakery, and they would bake up to 300 loaves of bread a day, and eventually my grandfather bought that off of his father. My grandmother and him lived there, the apartment up overhead, and they ended up with 4 children. And it stayed with the family. They ran that for 50 years. Well, he'd go around my grandfather to farmers and pick up the milk and cream, and he made his own ice cream. And people would stop in there, and not only did they buy ice cream, but he had a lunch counter in there, and people come there to eat at dinner time, and he'd have soup and sandwiches and ice cream. My mother worked in my grandparents' bakery. In 1954, they built that building where Morrison's restaurant was. and Mom ran that for 17 years. It was kind of a meeting place for the kids around town, basketball games or volleyball or that. They'd swarm into the restaurant. It was kind of a hangout for everybody after the games. Shortly after Mom sold it, the people that had bought it, they changed it to the Cardinal Country. And now it's Kay's restaurant. But all the time we had it was called Morson's Lunch. Well, I got out of high school in 1960 and went on to barber school, took that up. And I got out of barber school. You had to serve a 18 months apprenticeship, and I was an apprentice. I couldn't work in the shop alone, so I hired this guy to come and work with me until I served my apprenticeship. And he was with me 17 years. I got my license naturally, and he was with me 17 years. And then I got drafted in the military, and I was gone for 2 years, and this guy ran the shop for me while I was gone, so the barber shop never ever closed. Then I come back 1968 from the Army, and long hair was a big thing, and of course barbers didn't know anything about long hair. So I decided to go on to learn styling. I did that. I came home, opened a beauty shop up. I had 3 girls working in there, and me and another guy in the barbershop, so it was 5 of us all together. And I always tell people, they said, when are you going to retire? And I said, probably the day before my funeral. You know, because I like it. I don't know anything I'd rather do than be a barber. You know, it's a great thing. And we closed the beauty shop, and that's been several years ago. And we had too much I had other things going on. I always cut hair full time, but we had apartments and storage units and different things, and all that stuff kept me so busy.
My name is John McGarvey, and I want to tell the story of the Cochranton Beef Canning Project. The story actually starts far away from here in Eugene, Oregon, where a businessman and his wife, Harry and Bertha Holt, watched a movie back in 1955 about the Amerasian children, the children of American servicemen in Korea. And many of them were orphans, and they were kind of struck by the need. And so even though they had 6 children of their own, Harry went to Korea and came back with 8 babies, like age 8 months to 3.5, I think it was. And they adopted them. And then out of that, then eventually came an adoption agency that actually Holt International Children's Services continues today, operating in, I think, 9 different countries. So it kind of starts there, but then in 1963, a local family, Paul Eichhorn and his wife, adopted 2 Korean children through the Holt Orphanage, and they live here in Cochranton. They did at the time, and they became aware of the fact that there was a lack of meat there at the Ilsan Orphanage in Seoul, Korea, and so they arranged to have the Mennonite Central Committee's beef canner come stay an extra day in the area when they were doing another project, and they had, I think it was about 9 local farmers donated some cattle, and they got together and canned all this beef and sent it off to Korea, and they did that for a number of years until they moved to Paraguay and just passed that project on to the Cochranton Local Ministerial Association, and they carried it on for another 32 years, I think it was. I moved here with my wife and our daughter at the time in February of 1989, and beef canning had just happened in January, I think. I'm a local pastor, and since the local ministerial association, this was their project, at the very first meeting I went to, everyone was kind of talking about how it went, and I'm I'm trying to picture this. What is this beef canning thing, And so as I learned more and more about it, and then as it got time the next year for Beef Canning Day, every church had a responsibility on Beef Canning Day. Our church provided the lunch for all the workers and all that kind of thing. And so we were working at it and doing all the thing, but it wasn't until I actually got there that day and walked into the fire hall where it was being done and kind of saw all these people all standing around at tables. Well, it was big plywood tables on sawhorses, just cutting up beef, and then it went into the canner. This whole process that just was amazing to watch, and about 100 volunteers, I think, on Beef Canning Day usually. So it was great to be a part of that, and over the years then to know a little bit more about how the whole thing operated too. So the local ministerial association would set the budget usually each year, which the last number of years we did it was usually in the neighborhood of $8,000, and about maybe $6,000 of that would go towards purchasing the beef, and a local butcher would take care of that for us, buy it, butcher it, and prepare it, and so forth. And so donations came in from all across Cochranton, all throughout the area. Organizations and businesses from across the community would each do what they could. So some businesses, for instance, donated some of the supplies and materials needed for Beef Canning Day. Others pitched in and providing, for instance, a truck to transport it all, or those kinds of things, or a place to store it after all the beef canning was done and until it could be transported to Korea. And so it was kind of a community effort, not just individuals, but organizations and businesses and all kinds of, everybody pitched in. That was one of the great things about it, was it was really community-wide. And when you'd walk in on Beef Canning Day, you'd see people, young and old. They would actually let kids out of school to participate in beef canning. So there was something for everybody to do, and everybody, standing shoulder to shoulder, working at things and getting to know each other and enjoying the fellowship and working hard together. It was just a great community kind of event. A woman by the name of Phyllis Mumford kept meticulous records of all that happened over the many years. And the final year that we did the beef canning project in 1999, we canned 2,231 cans of beef and 432 cans of broth. But over the course of the 37 years or so that this project went on, there was a total of $189,533.74 exactly that was given in donations over the course of that time. And as far as the beef is concerned, 68,961 cans of beef and 14,133 cans of broth that were canned and went to the Holt Orphanage in Ilsan in Korea. So we're proud of that. We're thankful that we could be a part of that, and what a blessing it was.
My name is Susan Armberger, and I am the board president of the Cochranton Area Public Library. And I've been the president of the board for 8 or 9 years. I'm losing track, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. 2019 was the 50th birthday of our library. And the library was started originally by a group of 5 or 6 townspeople who thought Cochranton needed a library. One of them being Reverend Lloyd Baird and Jerry Sibilic, Elizabeth McFate, and Ed Muller. And I think they spent every minute of their day there for quite a while to get it going. And then they got a donation of used books from Meadville, and that's how the library started. They moved into what was the old elementary cafeteria. So when that was vacated, after they had moved out of that, the library got it for, I think, nothing from the school district as a donation, which was nice. So they started to build the library, which the ladies of the library kept that thing going. It looked lovely on the outside, but it had deteriorated quite badly, the back end of it, especially with the 2 Keystone Ordinance buildings. So I went happily to a board meeting one night, and our librarian stood there and looked at me and said, "We need to build a new building." And I like the bottom dropped out of my stomach. I said, "What do you mean we need to build a new building?" And she said, "We have major structural issues now. The side of the building was starting to collapse. And they advised us to move the collection as far forward as we could." So it took us about 3 years with permitting and lawyers and everything to get going, but we moved into the new building we have now in the fall of 2015, and we've enjoyed every minute of it. It's beautiful. But we started a fundraising campaign. We had all sorts of stuff. We had like last lunch in the building and all sorts of things to gather money. And we did a mailing as asking that we needed to build a building and could we get some donations. And we were fortunate. We got a lot of donations, and we had a girl from Cochranton donated a very nice donation in memory of her mother and dad. So because of all of that, and we had all local contractors, which they went above and beyond, and they pitched in a lot to make it happen. And so we have no mortgage on our building, and so, which is nice because the budget from the state is very limited. So we are very lucky. Our goal when we built the library was to make it a warm, comfortable, safe place for family and community members to come. And so we have tried to have a lot of programs, mostly geared, I will say, towards kids because they're so important. And we have the Tadpoles, which is our preschool reading group, and then we go clear up to the Croakers, which are our older women. And we have the craft group meets there. We also are involved with the Erie County Library System, and we get programs. The girl comes down from Erie and puts on some very interesting programs along the engineering, math, that type of thing. What I hope and what it is now is like a community meeting group. We try to promote programs throughout the town, and it's just a nice place for people to come and get together and connect with each other.
Hi, I'm Tammy Cowden, and I would love to tell you about the Cochranton YMCA. The Cochranton Y was part of a research. I think they did a lot of looking around. Would it make sense to bring the Y to this community? They found an open spot, used to be a video store, and found that the Y would work great in that location. So it was there. We've been there now for 8 years. Well, when we started there 8 years ago, we were actually as an express. And to the Y, an express means it's kind of, I would have to say, you're not a full-fledged YMCA yet because you don't have the membership base. A year later, we did, so we were awarded Cochranton YMCA, which is huge. That was big for us. We grew in membership. We're holding our own right now, which is good. We do have some classes that we like that we've grown there as well. We have Silver Sneakers 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That is an excellent program for seniors. We have a Power 45 class twice a week, Tuesday, Thursdays, and we have an app class on Wednesdays that everybody loves to come for that one. The kids can come at any time, age 7 to 11, for the cardiovascular equipment as long as they're attended with their parents. Then when they start to get a little bit older, they can use the weighted equipment as long as they have go through an orientation. So there's always that. And then we have a ton of fitness things that they can do, and that's throughout our 3 YMCAs. Cochranton's a small community, and it's so important to be able to have a Y, just to be able to have a place that people can go. Especially like when school lets out, kids can come here that aren't involved maybe in sports, where they can come to the Y and be involved in activities, exercise, a place where they can all meet with their friends. The Y is just a great place for everyone.
My name is Elaine Beers. I'm going to talk about Beers Florist, which has been in Cochranton for over 75 years. And it is a family-owned business, and where not only the matriarchs, Margaret and Clifford Beers, who started it, it was helped and run by family members, by nephews and grandchildren, sisters. It has been a wonderful service to our community. We gave many flowers away, and we serviced the funeral homes in Cochranton and surrounding areas in our flower shop. We did a lot of personal flowers, corsages. At Easter time back in the 50s, when everybody was buying flowers, we would do over 400 corsages for the Easter season. And at that time, we probably had 20 people that worked for us. And later on, when they bought the property in 32, and in 35, they started building the greenhouses. Our greenhouses covered quite an area for in town in Cochranton. We raised mostly, in the beginning years, all of our own flowers, chrysanthemums and snapdragons, and all of our cut flowers, lilies, would be grown. Our poinsettias we would grow. And as time went on, we could have them shipped in cheaper than we could heat the greenhouses to grow them. So we changed to a business of just annuals. And we would grow all the annuals, geraniums and petunias, and all the annual flowers. Mr. Beers, Clifford, always served on the school board and on the Borough Council. He was very active, and so were his son that grew into the business, which is my husband, Richard. And we took the business over probably in the late 50s. From that time on, Dick's mom and dad still worked. Dick's mom made her last bride's bouquet when she was 90 years old. And she loved to keep the books. She kept the books, and she was good at it. And we were, at that time, you knew everybody in the town. You knew who lived on what street and everything. Yeah, the flower shop we sold in 1999. We had the house was built right beside the flower shop, which we all lived in while we worked there. Dick was born there, and when they did the greenhouse, one of the first flowers that his dad grew was a carnation, and he took it into the upstairs bedroom in the house and gave it to Margaret for her son. And then we sold the greenhouses in 2000.
Hi, I'm Mike Morrison. I'm here to tell you about the Fallen Soldier Tribute car that I've been building over the past 12 years. Okay, I purchased the car in 2008. It was a 1980 Chevy Malibu. It was basically your run-of-the-mill streetcar. It was all stock, nothing cut up on it. And I just wanted to build something to honor all the fallen soldiers from the Pennsylvania National Guard who lost their life on terrorism, the war on terrorism since 9/11 in Iraq and Afghanistan. And it kind of first was going to be something that I could drive, quote unquote, on the street legally, and it quickly got out of hand. The car has a very large displacement motor in it with twin turbos. It runs on alcohol and makes approximately 2,000 horsepower. So we just run it on, like, for the drag strip and things like that, and do maybe car shows and such. In its current transmission and gearing, we've had it up to 175 miles an hour on a runway this past August out in Indianapolis. Originally enlisted in the Army, active duty in 1988, right out of high school. I worked on attack helicopters, and I was in the first Persian Gulf War with the 101st Airborne Division. Got out in 93, stayed out for a while, and I re-enlisted in 2008 in the Pennsylvania National Guard because I just missed it. And I worked on Apache attack helicopters. We deployed in 2012. We come back for a year, come back in August of 2013. But in 2013, April 9th, on a mission, two of my pilot buddies were they were escorting our guys on the ground, a truck convoy. There was a mechanical failure and the bird crashed and they both lost their lives. And I had already been building this car for several years, so when I got home, I was just really motivated. I wanted to get Matt Ruffner and Jarrett Yoder's names on the car to kind of make it complete. But the car itself, when I built it, I wanted to keep a helicopter's theme to it. So there was actually about 3,000 rivets through the outside of this car to mimic the skin of a helicopter. I built a custom dash. It actually has actual aircraft instruments in the dash. And on my shifter on the floor, there's what's called a cyclic grip, which is in helicopters. It has your triggers and buttons on it. We had an aircraft in Desert Storm that was shot down. Pilots were fine though. Bird was a little too far gone for wear, so they parted it out. Well, a friend of mine was able to get this cyclic grip control from the front seat of this Cobra that I used to work on, which is where the gunner sit who launched all the weapons. Well, we took that and mounted it right to the actual automatic shifter on the floor. And that's the big conversation piece. When people look in and see that cyclic grip, they're like, wow, where'd you get that? And then a friend of mine who was in Desert Storm here about 2 years ago, I just sent him a picture of it. And Tim said the same thing. He's like, where did you get a cyclic grip? And I said, that's from your aircraft that you were the crew chief of in Desert Storm. And he was just blown away. So it's it's tied together to it. They originally built it to do quarter-mile drag racing, the way it's geared. And when we went to the half-mile event in Indianapolis last year, I had met some disabled vets that were there. And I put a second seat in it. It was a racing seat with the proper 5-point harness, and the car has a roll cage in it, so we were legal. And these guys were amazing what some of them went through, either being in IEDs. One was shot in the head by a sniper, and it took away his speech. And I paid for, it's ironic, I had to pay to take people for a ride in my own car, but I did it because it was so awesome. Just, we had pictures of them strapping them in the car and their reaction afterwards, and it was really neat. It was all worth it. In a nutshell, the reason I built it was because you see celebrities doing silly things on the media, and you hear about it for weeks, sometimes months. Somebody in your hometown gets, loses their life. There's a sidebar in the paper or whatever for a day, and it's gone. And I want to do something that's like, it'd be a quote-unquote rolling memorial that has these guys on it that I can take to places and honor them. It's not about me. It's just them. And I have met several people that have walked up to the car and say, that was my nephew or that was my cousin or whatever. And it really hits home when there's only 41 names on it and somebody sees a loved one on it, and it just floors you.
Hello, my name is Heather Beachy, and today I'm going to talk about becoming the first female police chief in Cochranton, Pennsylvania. I've always wanted to be a police officer, and when I moved to Pennsylvania, I went to the academy, and I was fortunate enough to get a job here in Cochranton. In 2007, I was hired as a part-time officer with the Cochranton Police Department. In 2009, I was hired as a full-time officer. And then in the summer of 2009, I was hired as I was promoted to the sergeant. And then when my previous police chief retired in the summer of 2012, I was promoted to the chief's position. As a female in the law enforcement profession, I haven't ever had any instances where I felt like less of an officer than my counterparts. I've always been treated about the same. I think that the female, we have maybe a different perspective. Maybe we can show a little bit more empathy in different situations than maybe a male could. People sometimes maybe feel more comfortable talking to us, I have found. So if anything, I feel better, I think, as being a female and more fortunate in this line of work. In Cochranton, we have a great benefit where we can be very community-oriented. We're not spread as thin as some of the bigger departments, so we can be more interactive with our community. We can get out there. I'm able to go to the schools. I'm able to hang out with the kids. They know me. Same with the elderly community. I'm able to go visit them and make sure they're doing all right. And, you know, there's so many scams going on nowadays, different things that elderly people fall victim to, and I can help explain to them different things and just help them with some of their concerns. Where in bigger departments, they probably don't have the opportunity to do that. It's important to have good community relations in a small town because people feel safer, and you know, we're a community-oriented family town here. We want our people to feel safe. We want them to know that we're out there and we're watching and we're keeping track of them. It's important for people to feel safe in our town. We want them to know who we are. I frequently have people come to my door and ask me for stuff. It's just nice in the small town because we're relatable and they know us. My favorite part of my job is the people. I love people. When I was in the academy, they asked us, why do you want to be a police officer? And they said to us, now don't say it's because you want to help people. But that was truly my answer. It was that I want to help people, and I love that I can do that, and I'm in a community where my kids are growing up and I'm able to see them and just be part of the community.
So I'm Jody Baker Lewis, and I live on Sugar Lake, so outside the borough of Cochranton, but still a Cochranton resident. And I'm just going to chat with you guys about how this community came together and revitalized itself, and how, as a resident of the community, as somebody who got to help, as a mom whose kids were in high school, how amazing that was to see what just a few people can make happen. So my kids and I came to church over here for a lot of years before we moved here, and got to know some of the community that way. We spent all of our free time here. In fact, most weekends on Friday nights, we packed bags and stayed here until Sunday after youth group and went home. My kids really wanted to graduate from school here because most of their friends were at Cochranton High School and not at Franklin High School. But I was an elected official at that time and couldn't move outside the residence where I was. At some point in life, we decided that we would move here. 2 of my 3 kids were able to graduate from here. And what I did when I first got here was take over the baseball concession stand. No better way to get to know the community than to be at a baseball concession stand 7 days a week and meet everybody. So that I got to meet so many of the parents, so many of the community who just came out and supported the kids. It was a great thing. And over the years, I was able to watch this community develop into what you guys have been fortunate enough to see today. It's just doors are opening again. I also used to kayak a lot and would get off years ago. There was a pizza shop here in town, so we would get off and pull our kayaks out and eat here and restock our groceries and snacks and go. And I saw those doors close, and now things are opening and happening, and it's been amazing. So the CARE organization started with a few individuals. Most prominent in my mind was the mayor, Mark Roach. He is a cheerleader and a starter for so many things in this community. And there were several individuals that sat down and wanted to make things happen here to provide housing for their senior citizens, to make things friendly and welcoming and warm, and people to want to live here and stay here. So the first thing that I remember them doing were baskets and flowers downtown. And they did them without many businesses in the downtown, but what a difference it made to just drive through the town and see fresh flowers outside or greens at Christmas time. And then they put new signs at the entrances to the borough. And there you go again, just coming in and seeing welcome to Cochranton, was a big thing for here. And then it just exploded. We have a new playground and so many more people came on board. CARE has a full board. And then the community got behind them, and businesses from outside the community got behind them, and alumni. And so there's a credit union here now, there's a drugstore here now. The senior housing should be up and running here soon. And the launch and the pull-off for boating along French Creek, they've been able to capture that as well. So it's just amazing. The revitalization has definitely created a spirit of community and a spirit of pride. Along with revitalization came a YMCA. So you can go in and work out a little bit. It's not a full Y, but it's a little bit here. And so they do a race. I know that the cross country team and the Greenways have done races here as well. The parade and the fair are so huge here for such a small community. I can remember the first couple times I went to it and going back to Franklin where I lived and saying, you can't believe what happens in this town. The parade is huge. The people, they bring family and friends from other places and picnic, and then you can't get through the fair that night, but that's what it's all about, is seeing people. So yes, and you see smiles on people's faces and just the pride, just with the new theater and the stores that are opening. It's just, there's pride here, and it's not gonna go away anytime soon, and I'm anxious to see what bigger things happen with this. Just the ability that they now have, even in my mind, because I'm a big outdoor person, so they've made it friendly to pull your boats and over here and stop in town. And the pull off, if you guys haven't seen it, is just gorgeous down by the bridge. And what a welcoming sight, no matter whether you're in a car, on a bicycle, in a boat, to come in here and to know that these people care about their community.
Hi, my name is Marcia Rind. I'm president of the Cochranton Area Redevelopment Effort, better known as CARE. We formed about 10 years ago. There was a group of civic-minded individuals in the community that wanted to make Cochranton a better place to live. Our focus was to facilitate community planning and enhance medical services. We also wanted to do beautification projects in the community, as well as historic preservation and the enhancement of the arts. Our Cochranton Community Service Complex came to fruition after there was a building here in Cochranton that had been vacant for many, many years. And with working through the Progress Alliance out of Meadville, they came in and they took over this facility. Our goal was to make sure that we could bring some medical services to the community. We have not had pharmacy here for 28 years, and that was a major part of wanting to bring that back to the Cochranton community. Adams Place, we're really excited about. When we started CARE, one of our main goals was to try to bring affordable senior housing to Cochranton. And this had been tried over the past 40 years. Many individuals had tried to do it. But the sewage system that we had here would not support a multi-level senior facility or housing facility of that size. several years ago, they actually put in a new sewage system. So that gave us the green light that, okay, now we need to move forward. And we served as a conduit with Senator Michelle Brooks, as well as the Hudson Company and the Economic Progress Alliance. And collectively, we came up with the drawings and the facility and what we needed within our community. So we are really excited because the groundbreaking is going to take place here this spring. The facility should be open in the spring of 2021, and it will consist of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. The Iris Theater project was one that we took on early on. We formed our group in 2011. And through our collaborative efforts with other organizations and individuals, in 2013, the Cochranton Community Church, they took over. And they totally renovated the theater, and they called it the Motzing Center after Jack and Grace. And in the front of the theater is a coffee house, and it's called Caffinos. And it's a wonderful place to take your family. It's a great asset to our community as well. Karen's taken on many projects throughout the course of the years. One of the first one was our welcome sign. And the Cochranton Women's Club actually takes care of all of the landscaping and the flowers every season with our welcome sign. We also have beautification projects with planting trees and just sprucing up the whole neighborhood, so to speak. We have a program with the high school. We've developed a program with the principal there to help the seniors when they go for job interviews by bringing businesses in to help with things that prepare them to do a job interview. We also have our Creektown project and the kayak and boat launch down near the new bridge, which is another great asset for our community. And we utilized some area that was all grown up. We had volunteers come in and clean it up, and it's a wonderful place to spend an afternoon and have a picnic, go kayaking or boating. The main mission that we had when CARE was formed was to make our community a better place to live and a place that would attract families. We wanted to be a family-friendly community. And it's really important. We have a borough council and, we have a lot of organizations within the community, but the day of the civic organization stepping up to do a lot is no longer the case. Everybody's so busy. So what we're looking for is individuals that want to be part of our organization, our CARE Corps as we call it, and they're individuals that have an interest in a certain area, say the kayaking, for example. And when we put our minds and our ideas together as a small community and we work with all the organizations and the individuals, we can make really amazing things happen. But we can't do it ourselves. It takes the whole community. And if you want to live in a town that you're proud to say is home, it's important for the people of the community to step up and to make that possible.
My name is Nathan Smith, and I'm here to talk about the Motzing Center. So a local businessman in town, W.L. Cubby Dunn, actually built the original theater in 1946, and they opened in 1947 with their first movie, which was a very popular thing in the town. They had a huge turnout for their grand opening. They ran it for 20 years or so. In the mid-60s, there was a downturn and business kind of slowed down. So in 1971, the Jack and Grace Motzing began to run the theater for W.L. Dunn. It had been closed for a few years prior to that, and they had convinced him to just let them manage it for him. I think he just kind of covered the heating bills and they took care of everything else. They ran that as a ministry of their church. They had shown a lot of Billy Graham movies. That I guess was the thing at the time that was just starting, I believe. Probably from 2010 to 2013, they had been winding down. They were in their 80s. Business was very slow. The theater had declined structurally and mechanically. That equipment was very old and dated, and a lot of breakdowns, and it was an expensive building to try to heat due to when it was built. And the local care committee had inquired as to maybe taking it over and running it. They, for whatever reason, weren't able to do that. I think a lack of resources when they saw how big of a project it was going to be. And that was when Steve Clulo, who was the pastor of Cochranton Community Church at that time, and another gentleman had both kind of had a similar idea at the same time, got their minds together and kind of brainstormed and thought, could we do something with the old Irish Theater, utilize that somehow. At that time, they contacted me and asked me what I thought. I'm an electrician by trade, and they wanted some input into the structure of the building and what could be done. So we'd met about it and looked it over. Got in touch with the architects, began planning phase. It took about 1.5 years to get blueprints and approvals from the state and all the plans together. In 2014, we started demolition of the project. Primarily all volunteer-based. There was a few contractors that we paid to do a few things. Some local businesses, Meadville Plate Glass, Allen Hart Machinery, donated time, donated equipment, worked, gave us discounts on materials. There was a lot of other people as well. But we had a pretty much volunteer force that spent 1.5 years renovating the building from top to bottom, insulating it, all new heating systems, all new plumbing systems, all new electrical systems, everything. It was brand new. We reduced the size of the theater. It was originally seated over 400 people, and we reduced that down to about 170 to make room for the coffee house that we wanted to add. And in 2016, November of 2016 was the grand opening. So when we were getting ready for a grand opening, we had been trying to figure out what to call the new business. The Irish Theater was what it was always known as, and Irish was the name of W.L. Dunn's wife when he built it. That's why it was called that. Jack Motzing had promised W.L. Dunn that he would keep the name Irish Theater when he purchased it from him, and we in turn made a promise to Jack when the church purchased it that they would also keep the name Irish because he had originally made that promise. So we wanted to keep the name the Irish Theater. We also felt we should have another name for the coffee lounge. We, in honor of the Motzings and all the years that they put a lot of their own money into that business. I'm sure they never made a penny off of it, and they probably lost lots of money running it for the community to use. So we wanted to honor them, and we named it the Motzing Center, home of the Irish Theater and Cafino, the coffee lounge. So it's very popular there. On Friday and Saturday evenings, we show movies. They're all sometimes new releases. Most of the time, it's stuff that's been out a little while. But we usually have a very good turnout, especially if it's a popular Disney movie. We sell out very often, and unfortunately, you have to turn people away. A lot of the local community likes to just socialize in the coffee lounge, come down in the day and work on their laptops because there's free Wi-Fi, of course. College kids will come down and spend some time working on their projects, or people that work from home will occasionally come down and spend the day working there. It's pretty quiet throughout the day. So it's very popular with people in the community for that reason. The Cochranton Community Church thought it was very important to be able to renovate that business and make it a viable mainstay in the community. It had been here so long, and after seeing the Motzings run it as a ministry for so long and they were a part of our church, we wanted to be able to continue that as a way to bridge the gap between the community and the church, and to just reach out to the community and be able to serve them, offer them something that wasn't currently existing here that we thought there was a demand for. None of the church doesn't see any proceeds from the business. All the money that is generated goes back into it, or we then in turn actually donate that money out to other area nonprofit businesses.
Hi, I'm Erin Roach, and I'm going to talk about the playground that is at the Lions Park. There is a whole group of community people, that parents that were from the soccer group, just people of the community that wanted to be part of it, that thought that the equipment needed something new, and we weren't sure exactly what that was, if we could raise enough money or what we needed to do, so we got a group together to try to figure out what to do. Phase one of the project was raising the money, so we raised over $50,000. And then as a group, we decided which equipment we wanted to buy, which equipment is very expensive, so I don't think we realized how much money it actually was going to cost to get what we wanted. So we worked with 2 different companies for phase one. The one company they had a lunar net, so it's a climbing apparatus that the kids can use. So we got that from that group, and it actually was in Pittsburgh. Somebody had put it together and they didn't like it. It wasn't the right color, so they wanted the right color, so we got it for a discounted price, which was really nice. So that helped to be able to, get things running and start off. So phase 2, we worked with another company, and we have for a little kids section. So we had lots of people from the community that came and helped to be able to put all that in, so that we didn't have to have the company's people come and help us and have that much more money into doing it. So they came and helped a little bit, but we had a lot of the community people that came and did it. The other part that we did too was we put together a thank you with all the bricks. So there's a bench that parents can sit on and kind of watch what the kids are doing, and everybody's name that had contributed any money was on the bricks. And then major sponsors were a little bit bigger, so that's around there. So now all we have to worry about is trying to keep the mulch where it needs to be. A lot of the painting, if there's any more painting that we need to do, because we already did that once, but we had some issues with the paint, so sometimes it likes to strip off. So we keep trying to figure out what we need to do with the paint to keep it so that it stays on, so that it stays nice. Well, the soccer group is there in the summer all the time, so you see a lot of the kids when they're either before or after soccer practice playing on the equipment. And there's a lot of family reunions or different things that go on at the park, so there's always kids that are using it. You see kids after school that stop by to play on the equipment and just be around. And there's also a trail around it, so when the parents are walking or whatever, the kids can be playing. Well, it was definitely a community project. I mean, everybody came together. People we didn't even know were donating money just to be part of it because they wanted to keep our community great, so they wanted to improve it.
Hi, my name is David Zabilik, and I'll be chatting about the French Creek Heritage event held every year in Cochranton, Pennsylvania. Several years ago, as part of the CARE effort, we had been looking at the possibility of organizing a kind of a critical event for the community. And one of the areas that we focused on was the unique history of the region, and as well as the wonderful asset that is represented in the form of French Creek, and the importance of the creek and this entire valley in the regional history as well as national history. French Creek is a wonderfully unique, ecological, diverse asset for the region, and it's played a pivotal role in the development of the region and has played a pivotal role in the history of not only northwestern Pennsylvania, western Pennsylvania, but the nation as well. And that place in history deserves to be celebrated. And the French Creek Heritage event really is an offshoot of looking at that history and figuring out a way to present that to the public, both in the terms of speeches and presentations from the historical perspective on the region, as well as some speeches and demonstrations on the archaeological aspect. We have a wonderful partnership with our friends at Mercyhurst University, their anthropology and archaeology department, and they come down and they spend time setting up dig boxes, sample dig boxes, that some of our younger aspiring archaeologists spend time excavating and exploring. So we try through both the speeches, through the archaeological dig boxes, and other exhibitions and events, in addition to some living history demonstrations, to give a good representation and to give people the opportunity to step back in time and reconnect with history and understand what it was like to live in the 1700s and 1800s in the French Creek Valley. With regard to our living history component of the event, it's actually several different pieces. We have Saturday morning of the event, a set of reenactors come down French Creek in replica birch bark canoes, as well as bateaus. We have a veritable small flotilla that come down French Creek. They start early in the morning and land right at the Cochranton Landing. In addition to that effort, we also have a variety of what is referred to as sutlers, and those are the living history demonstrators. And this is showing the general public what it was like to live back in this era. So you have demonstrators such as the fur trade examples. You have trade goods like the cooper, who was the barrel maker. You have leather goods. You have the tinsmith and forge and other very, very important functions for making the products that were used in day-to-day life back in the 1700s. The French Creek Heritage Event is important for communities like Cochranton, and it's a way to reach back in time and reconnect with what has made these communities special. When you think back, this is an area that's been inhabited by human beings back to the 1100s, most likely. And based on the fact that we have a wonderful and beautiful natural resource here that has enabled a good life for the residents. And it's important to connect back to that, to understand what prior residents of the community and the region have gone through in pursuing their lives. And it also highlights, in some ways, at least speaking personally, it highlights the very vast differences between what life was like several hundred years ago and the very comfortable existence we have today. And when you see a demonstration with regard to the process of getting one's meal in the 1700s and getting just the simple goods that are required for everyday life, it makes you appreciate the world and the society we live in today.
My name is Melissa McMaruska. I live in Cochranton, Pennsylvania, and I would like to talk about some of the events that have happened as we live in this small town. When my husband and I moved into Cochranton in October of 1975, we were new to small town living, and by June of 1976, the town was getting ready for the bicentennial. There was a wagon train that was traveling across the nation, and lo and behold, Cochranton was one of the stops. So in preparation for that wagon train, the artists in town decided that they were going to paint the town emblem in the intersection and take up the entire intersection of the only intersection in town. And streets were blocked and families came out and people painted on this, this huge emblem that took up the entire intersection. And that was our introduction to living into this town, to realize that people knew one another, that they got excited about living here, that, that events could bring us all together. And we have been involved in this town ever since. Events in town very often involve large groups of people. One of them being building our new library, the other being development of the French Creek area. We had a new bridge built in town, and with that came a new launch and landing site. And with that came the idea that we really need to promote French Creek. It's historic, you know, George Washington came through here. It's absolutely beautiful, and the kayakers love it. So we decided that we would host our very first poker paddle down French Creek, starting at Shaw's Landing and ending in Cochranton with a big to-do and prizes, and really highlight the town and this new access area that we had. It turned out to be a phenomenal success. We had 48 kayakers come, many kayakers, 2 children and 1 very wet dog joined in the fun. We had a picnic at the end, and absolutely promises that everybody would return with their friends the next year. So we're hoping to make this an annual event. But once again, you know, the people turn out. They come together to make things happen in a very unique way. We're not a big urban area. People and families promote this town and love this town, so the poker paddle was just a way fun to do it. I think events in a small town keep us connected. I believe that without that human interaction, that things are not going to get done. And we need to know one another. And Cochranton is very good about coming up with events that bring not only just individual groups together, but also intergenerational connections. And I think that's what's going to keep Cochranton alive.
My name is Lydia Wagner. I go to Cochranton High School. I'm a sophomore. And I'm going to talk to you about the history and the current times of the fair today. So the first location of the fair was in a 22-acre field that you can see off of today's 322. It was a huge field. I mean, I can barely imagine what they fit and all that because it's such a small fair today. The first fair took place in 1877, and the price back then was 25 cents, which today is almost $7. But the fair is free now and has been for many years. The fair is located on River Street, and it is probably about 2 acres. It's very small, but we fit a whole bunch of vendors and buildings like the home show building in there. And it's always been a very small space, but whenever it's small, it seems a bit more community driven because everything's close. You can get anywhere, anytime you want. It's really close and good. Well, the first Miss Cochranton pageant happened in 1958, and it was originally held at the high school, and it was a big success. There was a lot of girls who came and dressed up and looked very pretty, and it has continued since then every year. The Cochranton High School used to be very heavily involved in it. They would do fundraisers for their junior and senior class trips, and sometimes they would have to run a booth and get graded on it. So it was a very fun thing. So we have gotten many new renovations. We just last year got new bleachers, and they were dedicated to the late Clark Duncan, who was a very great president of the fair board. He did a lot for the fair. And we got a new stage. It's bigger and painted a very nice red. And we also are getting a new horse arena this year and a new horse tent, but it's not really a tent because it's more just a roof structure, but it is currently being built right now. And we're also going to be getting a new home show building because the one we have right now is a bit run down, so it's going to be a new big project for us for next year. There are a lot of people who bring in livestock, cows, horses, there's goats and sheep and chickens, bunnies, all sorts of stuff, and the kids have a lot of fun petting all of them too. We have cow shows in the arena, so young kids in 4-H usually go out and show their cows and have a good time. Yes, there are a lot of rides, usually more kid-oriented. There's bouncy houses and little swingy things that go around, and there's also a pony ride, which a lot of kids like. So the fair is very community-oriented. I mean, people do all sorts of community service. They're not paid for barely anything, and we have had so many people just come together and make the fair run. And it's a very special thing that you don't usually get to see. The fair board right now, the senior fair board, we just had elections earlier this year and we kept all the same officers. But we recently created the junior fair board in 2019, and I was one of the inaugural members. And we have done a lot since then. We've put in over 100 hours worth of service into the fair. And we're always looking for new members because a growing community needs a growing fair.
My name is Carl Miller, and I'm the Director of Bands and Music Teacher here at Cochranton Junior Senior High and Cochranton Elementary School. The Cochranton Band has been a source of pride for the Cochranton community for a long time. Kind of a unique story here in town is in the last 75 years, there's only been 3 band directors here in Cochranton. Kind of started out in the Jim Reed era. He was here for 32 years and was well known for his big band and the parade band. And then Jim Barry took over after that. And then the last 30 years, I've been here as the band director. The Cochranton High School Band is a very competitive program. We compete in many different circuits. The local one here is the Lakeshore Marching Band Association out of Erie, Pennsylvania. We've also competed in the Pennsylvania Interscholastic Marching Band Association in Pittsburgh, the Tournament of Bands, Bands of America, the Ohio Music Educators Association, and also nationally at Bands of America. The band has done a lot of traveling in the past. One of the first trips they took a long time ago was to the Bahamas, a trip I'm sure probably couldn't be done today just because of cost. But recently the band has performed at Disney World in Orlando, Florida. The band has also performed at the World's Fair in Knoxville, Tennessee, festivals in Washington, D.C., Winchester, Virginia, Holland, Michigan, just to name a few. The band's success is well documented over the years. The band has won many Lakeshore Marching Band Association championships. In fact, they hold the circuit record, winning 30 championships in the 35 years of the circuit. And currently we're on a 22-year win streak where they've won 22 years in a row. The band also has 2 PIMBA state championships to their resume, Tournament of Bands regional championship, and also a top 10 finish in the Atlantic Coast Championships that were held a couple years ago. It's kind of neat being from a small town. I didn't grow up here, but my wife did, and she's the assistant band director here. A lot of our staff members have been members of the band in the past, so they're back to now help the band out and give back. But there's a lot of family stories here too, where a lot of parents graduated and their kids are marching now, or they have their grandparents were in the band. I know my wife has that same thing. Her mom was in the band, and we even have a lot of kids who talk about instruments that have marched with them, their uncle, their mom, different things. So it's kind of neat to see generations of people being involved in the program. Obviously, running a marching band is not a one-man show or even a two-man show. We have a ton of support here from parents and community members. We have a very established and successful music booster organization, the Cochranton High School Music Boosters. We also have a very supportive community who rallies behind the band and helps us out when we need it. I think it's part of the town's identity. You know, a lot of people hear of Cochranton and they think of the band or they think of the sports teams. It's still kind of small town USA where a lot of the community revolves around what goes on at the high school. I came from a really large school in a big town down near Pittsburgh. When I first came here, it was supposed to be for a couple years and then move on to somewhere else. And 30 years later, I'm still here because it's wonderful working in a small town. I've really enjoyed working with the students over the years and being that I work at the elementary school and the high school, it's great to see these kids grow up from 4th grade the whole way through 12th grade and beyond.
So my name's Chris Yost. I am the robotics teacher from Cochranton High School. I'm going to be talking about our robotics program a little bit. When I first started, it was basic woodworking projects that maybe I still did when I was in high school 13, 14 years ago. So I looked at the program like, okay, well, I know that I wanted to change it into something more modern. So my big thing was I looked at the needs of the economy locally a little bit. I looked at what our biggest kind of like boom is locally, which is manufacturing and tool and die. I spent a lot of time talking to local industry leaders, local manufacturers, people who work in the industry, getting an idea of exactly, what they want in an employee per se. So with the RoboBots program, which was just kind of getting its spark, that program was developed to bridge the gap between manufacturing and school. So whenever the competitions first came about, such as RoboBots, all the schools locally jumped on board. So I came right into it, not really having any experience per se in manufacturing. So we jumped into our first year, not really knowing what to expect, what to do, and we epically failed at what we went into it. I think the first year I had 5 students. We did it as an after-school program, and I think we took like 17th place or something like that. So it was still like, okay, now I know what we need to do. I know, how this whole program works. So we started to look at the program. Me and my administration is, how can we develop a class around this, but also keep it to where we're providing those direct skills that the kids need. So I developed a class called Robotics Engineering 1, and that took off right off the bat. I mean, I had a full class of, I think, 18 kids maybe within the first 2 years that class started. And right after the class started, we started doing better within the competitions because we had the means to do so. Our first big, I guess you could say, win was our local competition regionally here that we had at Meadville High School. I believe that was back in 2012. I had a group of 5 or 6 students within that group, and we had won the competition locally, and then we were given the opportunity to go to the national competition. Really didn't even know it existed at that point necessarily. So when we got to the national competition, that's when it was kind of like, okay, now we're in a whole different realm of what we have to experience. So we competed against teams from Puerto Rico, Florida, Iowa, California, and a lot of these schools have the same quality students that I have, but they have access to maybe better equipment, or maybe they are having a shop outsource and get their parts made for them. So we looked at it from now as a whole different retrospect, a whole different level. So knowing that now, we came back, competed regionally for another 2 or 3 years, and in 2016 we went back to nationals after we had won our regional competitions. I think at that point it was 4 years in a row. So when we went back to nationals that year, I had 3 separate teams with me that year, and I think I had a total of like 28 kids. It was the most kids I've ever had. We got to CalU, where actually I went to college at, so it was kind of like a little bit of a like cool thing to do. You go back to your college to compete with the kids now you're teaching. So we get back to CalU, and we competed that year, and a lot of the kids didn't realize that when you go to the national competition that colleges are also allowed to compete. So we were up against schools that were technical colleges that were, they had adults on their teams that were 35, 40 years old that were mechanical engineers. They started seeing schools like Carnegie Mellon University, and it's like, oh, so we're competing against people that have IQs of 160, you know, they have an engineering degree already. So they were really intimidated by that. And I simply just told them, I says, you know, you guys want to stand around and whine about it, or you just want to go and win? So that year they stepped up, and we were rolling through the competition pretty easily at some point, but just like any bracketed competition, you start to get down towards the end, and it starts to get extremely difficult, being that the competition rules state that you may get an hour in between a match, but it may be 20 minutes. So it's kind of like a NASCAR pit crew whenever the kids are done, in a match. So we got up against the previous national champions from the year before that, Plum High School out of Pittsburgh, and I had done my research on all of these teams that have been winning national competitions, and we've been looking at their designs also, how we could make and innovate ideas too. So my students got into the arena and the ring at that point thinking, we just got to go in there and just nonstop. So they went into that match and completely demolished them. And that was that moment where it was like, we got a chance. I think during that match, it was a full 2 minutes and 30 seconds, I think, somewhere around there. But during that match, our designer robot never lifted off the ground because we never got hit whatsoever. So at that point, I think they realized we got a chance. And here we are up against Carnegie Mellon University in the finals match. They had 1 loss and we had no losses. We had gone through the competition undefeated. So the first match we get in there, and it's head-to-head, octagonal arena, and it seemed like they went through the bracket just as easily as we did. I think they lost the match just by getting hung up on the wall or something. So we got into that match kind of a little bit nauseous and a little bit scared, and the kids, they had a little bit of anxiety, but we went into that first match, and I think we lost the match within the first 30 seconds. So they were really distraught at that point. But the way the competition works is they get 20 minutes minimum in between a match to get batteries charged, get the bot, fully functional if needs be. So we got back to the pit table, and there were just pieces bent, twisted, torn from the 3 or 4 impacts that they put on us. But at that point, all 28 kids, instead of just standing around watching from my school, everybody's pitching in and taking parts out of the bot, trying to bend them straight and bang them straight and getting batteries charged for everybody. And it was nice to see the camaraderie, not just between those 5 or 6 students, but the 28 kids that everybody pitched in, with the help. So they actually got everything together, got it all functional and working again. We went back into that match knowing that what just happened to us was a little bit of a fluke, but at the same time, Colton Boozer, who was the driver, knew I need to do something different now. So the second match, which was only 20 minutes later, we got back into the arena and we danced around for about 20 or 30 seconds, and Colton put a hit on him front to front and face to face and flipped him completely upside down vertical. And then they were driving around upside down, and Colton, for some reason, it was just like the pitch perfect moment. He turned and full throttle, and we hit them head to head in the middle of the arena, and I think we threw him A to B to A back and forth. During that period, whenever he hit them, we must have been a piece on the bottom of their bot, and when they landed right side up. So at that point, their wheels were immobile, and the rules state that if you have an immobile design and you can't show any movement, the match is over. And at that point, it was like, you could see everybody's looks on their faces. It was just like, okay, we did it. We did it. And it was awesome.
My favorite thing about Cochranton is I've always just loved small town life, people, the interaction of people, and just the chance to get to know your neighbors and all that.
What I love about the community is the close-knit nature of it. It's a wonderful place. When I was growing up, as a youngster, I at times found that the 1,000-person community was somewhat slow. I've since spent time in my career in cities like New York and New Jersey, and I look back and see it's wonderful to have experience both of growing up in a town of 1,000 smiling faces, as well as seeing what the larger world has to offer.
In 145 years, we've only doubled our population. I know that sounds bad for growth, but a small town has something special that you never get in a bigger place. I mean, you walk down the street, people talk to you, how you doing today, and that's the kind of world I grew up in and the world I like to hold on to.
It's a small community. I grew up in Conneaut Lake, so Cochranton is a lot like Conneaut Lake. So it really makes me feel at home when I'm here. People are the same, I think. Of course, there's going to be a little bit of differences, but Cochranton takes care of itself. When there's something that anybody needs, there's always people there to jump up and help out. And I like that.
So I was born and raised in Cochranton, so I've been here all my life, and it's a great place, and I enjoy being part of the community, so I like that part of it.
I and my family have lived in Cochranton all our lives, and one of the things that I appreciate the most is knowing the community, being active in the women's group. We go to all the great-grandkids' basketball games and love it.
So I've lived in Cochranton my whole life, and my favorite thing has to be the community. Everybody knows each other, and we're all super nice, and it's just a very warm and friendly environment. And we recently got the Cafino building, and there's all sorts of new stuff that's happening, but at the same time, it's keeping a time in history where everyone was always warm and welcoming.
My favorite thing about Cochranton just is everybody's so friendly. You stop at the gas station or stop at the store and everybody says hi. Everybody's willing to help you out and help you along the way.
It's one of those towns where everybody pulls together for something all the time. When somebody needs help or we're reaching out for sponsorship for robotics, it seems like it's just that hometown town that everybody knows and wants to be a part of.
It's the people. I love that pretty much everybody knows everybody. It's kind of like Mayberry here. We all know each other, we all support each other. My favorite thing to do here as the police chief, and this is one of my favorite things about this town, is when our kids win sporting events and we get to bring them into town with the lights and sirens and celebration, do the lap around the town. those are the good things about being able to live in a small community in Cochranton.
My son started school here in 4th grade, so the people that he met and the care and the support that they received just from people here is probably my favorite thing. If you're in a bigger area, that doesn't, you can't know the teachers and the coaches and the families quite as well as you can in a small town, and to know that if he needed anything and I wasn't available, there was somebody here. And I know it wasn't just for my son, that's how they are. They take care of each other, and I think that is probably my favorite thing about Cochranton and the smaller town life.
I don't know anywhere I'd rather live. I mean, it's some of the finest people. You know, I know everybody, and pretty much everybody knows me. And I think Cochranton's great. It really is. The nice thing is, walk in the post office in the morning and, hi, John, hi, Fred, hi, Bill, whatever, and it's like I feel sorry for people who live in a city that don't know anybody,
I like it here because it's low key. I mean, 9 times out of 10, you walk down the street any given day and someone yells or beeps the horn at you, they know you. And there's no crime for the most part. And it's just, I don't like the hustle bustle of big city life. And I always joke that sit at the red light, there's more than 3 cars in front of you. It's a traffic jam. But I just love it.
I like the close-knit feel, and being able to pretty much know everybody, and it's a secure, safe place to live, friendly for kids. You feel safe letting them go out and about and roam around alone. That's hard to come by in today's society.
I love that we live in a town that has so much to offer in a small amount of space. I love that we now have a pharmacy, we have a coffee shop, we have a theater that caters to families here in town. Everything is within walking distance. And when you walk down the street, you are guaranteed a hello, or how are you doing, or just some kind of connection there, whether you know that person or not. It's just, I find it to be a very friendly town.
My favorite thing about Cochranton is everybody knows everybody. Even if you really don't want them to know what you're doing, they know. And to me, that is, it's just like the mayor and I. We've known each other since we were 5. And I think that's special, because it does make it, we have grumbling, everybody does, but it makes people want to help each other, especially in times of need or something like that. So I just like it that we all know each other.
It's just a small, friendly community. Everybody knows everybody. If somebody's hurting, the whole town rallies around them. And it's just comforting to walk into the grocery store or the post office and run into familiar faces. I guess that's what I like most about the community, and it's a wonderful place to live, and we're trying to make it even more wonderful.
Well, I'm the historian, so you have to love everything about Cochranton. When I'm always asked this question, the one way I usually replied is, our greatest asset is our people. And the relationships between our people over the years and how we have established ourselves makes us a very special place to live.
Our Town Stories from Cochranton is brought to you in part by the Cochranton Area Redevelopment Effort. Known as CARE, they exist to foster a broad range of improvements in Cochranton and the surrounding area through community planning, beautification, historical preservation, and advancement of the arts. To date, CARE has supported enhanced medical services, a community park renovation, green space development, recreation along French Creek, and the upcoming senior housing complex. Information is available at cochrantoncare.org and Facebook. Our Town Stories from Cochranton is also brought to you in part by viewers like you. Thank you.